Are we good to begin, Superintendent Cruz? With this?
Yes, we have quorum now, so we can.
Okay, great.
Oh, I see chaos. Okay.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We will go ahead and begin open session here at 7:01, and we will start with item 3, general matters. Item 3.01, the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read now. And just pull that up here. We acknowledge that the Franklin-McKinley school districts and our schools are located in the Muwekma Ohlone Nation, the sovereign and original peoples of the skies, land, and waters where we work and learn and work. The Muwekma Ohlone people are the stewards of these lands and of the teaching and learning that come from and responds to the needs of the land and the people who share it. May our daily lives and work, learning, teaching, and community engagement support the evolving vision of the Muwekma Ohlone for their community and these lands. We will now go to item 3.02, the flag salute. If I could ask Clerk Rosado, can you lead us in the flag salute today, please? Thank you.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now go to item 3.03, approve, disapprove orders, additions to the agenda. Board members, are there any?
No.
Seeing none, we'll go to item 3.04, approve, disapprove order of the agenda.
None.
Okay, we will go to item 3.05, report of action taken in closed session. Superintendent Cruz.
Yes, the board unanimously approved the closed session minutes of March 23rd, 2021, with board member Vice President Ton Tran absent. There are no other actions to report.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. We will now go to item 4, oral communications. Members of the public may address the board on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board or agenda items. Members of the public may also address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. No action can be taken on any agenda items at this time. Questions may be referred to the administration or put on a future agenda. So we will go to item 4.01, oral communications. Superintendent Cruz, do we have any individuals who'd like to speak at this time?
We have one speaker for general matters, and then we do have 19 speakers or 18 speakers for item 5.03. So I will ask Scott Shillemson to, he is wanting to speak on general matters.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, having a little technical difficulties tonight. I wanted to speak regarding our tentative agreement that the board will be voting on tonight. And I just wanted to say that I am really pleased that we were once again able to reach an agreement with, I won't call it ease, but I will say certainly with a lot of, in a timely manner, and a lot of goodwill and understanding at the table, understanding that both sides have different interests, and in some areas our interests align very well, and in other areas it can be very challenging to find that common ground. But I think over the last number of years, we've really gotten into a good groove in working, our FMEA team working with the district team, and I think it shows in how we've been able to settle a little quicker each year and avoiding things like going to impasse and some of the uglier things that happen in bargaining sometimes. So I'm always grateful when we are able to settle a bargaining agreement, and always think it's time for celebration and looking at what worked and what we can improve in the process going forward. And Superintendent Cruz has been a good partner in figuring out how to make this an experience that is as effective as possible. And so I once again want to say thank you to the district bargaining team and also to the Superintendent Cruz and to the board for considering and hopefully approving this tentative agreement. Our bargaining unit did vote on it and with overwhelming support has approved it. So we look forward to your passage tonight and the implementation of this agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Superintendent Cruz, I do see another hand. Do we know if that's for public comments?
I did ask the individual, what is the question? I have not had a response. There was no listing. There's listed as Communication Hill on the registration. So
Okay. So we'll go ahead and go to, and so hopefully this individual will have an opportunity to address that item when it comes up.
yes, we have a number. Now we're up to 21 registered for 5.03 Communication Hill.
Okay, thank you. So we will go on to item 5, information discussion and/or action items. Item 5.01, an update on prioritizing diverse student needs plan, which was 2019 through 2022. I see Dr. Galvarin and Dr. Martinez-Palmer.
Yes, good evening. Dr. Galvarin will start the presentation and then I'll be speaking on some of the slides. So Miriam. Miriam, you're muted. Miriam, you're still muted. I don't know if you can hear us.
Sorry, I've been talking and talking and nobody can hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So we're giving you an update on the progress on the resolution that was passed, resolution number 2018-44. Regarding the increasing access to high quality education and resources for all students, but focusing on students with special needs. The resolution, I'm just giving a little summary just in case to bring everybody up to date. The resolution has 5 sessions to work on that, or 5 goals, and each one had activities or sub goals attached to each one of them. The focus was alternative reclassification process for students with disabilities and onboarding of new staff, new staff to special education that will be certificated and also are classified, and also compliant regarding the IEP to be in a way that the students will be benefiting, it has educational benefit for the students, and above all, multi-tier system of support and integrated professional development. I'm just going to take a few minutes and talk about each one. As you know, when we developed the plan, basically I don't know who is doing the
Miriam, you need to let you need to let Samara know when to move forward on the slides.
Okay, so since I wasn't reading word by word from the slides, I wasn't sorry about that. So let's go to slide number 3, please. So we establish a stakeholder groups and meet with various groups of people who are working in special education. We met with our teachers, SDC teachers, RSP teachers, psychologists, speech and language pathologists, and also our administrators to develop the plan. What are the things we need to do to improve that quality, high quality education for our students? And it's already listed. I'm sure you already know we had quarterly meeting with all the staffs in special education, quarterly meeting with the parents of the students with disabilities to get feedback from them. And also above all, we were meeting regularly with ed services, administrators and staff. And also we interviewed some stakeholders. So we developed the plan. We came up with the strategies and activities for each one of those goals that we had in order to really improve what we already planned to do. Slide number 4, please. So the 3-year plan that we developed, the major focus was onboarding of the new staff because we want retention, and compliant IEP, which is we want to be meaningful and students really benefit from it. So the services and the goals and everything else will be to the best interest of the student to make progress to be able to go back to general education. And we want to integrated professional development for general and special education teachers, alternative reclassification process, and multi-tier system of support that we are working on that to develop the more comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. So for onboarding of the new special education staff, in the process, there were 2 or 3 days of professional development at the beginning. And I think at the very first, I call it booster shot for all this new staff to go through all the procedures and remember all the things. But one of the things we did in those activities have progressive professional development. So they do have an overall at what it is, how it works, and IEP and everything else. Then we meet with them at least every couple of weeks or every month. Right now, so far for this year, we already provided 43 hours of professional development to our new staff. This is not including one-to-one support that they receive from program specialists or psychologists or myself. So these are the things that, works a little bit better. And we are then providing a kind of like a resources available for them so they can go to that one. And another things that really help us that our inclusion program, hiring the inclusion TOSA or inclusion specialists for full inclusion students to support the general education teacher and support the students in that classroom to make sure that their IEPs are implemented while they are still in general education. Next slide, please. The next part was working on that compliant IEP in a way that to develop the IEP in a way that the student will be benefiting from their goals and objective and where they are. One of the things that we wanted to do, this was a case 2 years ago, Andrew, that basically the judge says you can't just have, because you look at the students right now and have a minimum, you want them to look at the students' progress. And we always know, IDEA always says that you always want to compare and you want the student to go back to general education. So that's why we have that 43 hours of professional development, because we're constantly working with our new staff, and our veteran staff are welcome to get a refresher. We have developed the system to monitor the progress of the students, especially monitoring on their goals. And we are still working with the district at the district level for MTSS. And I think some sites are piloting some MTSS material at this point. Next slide is talking about the next level, that integrated professional development. We collaborated with curriculum and instruction with the new curriculum. So both general and special education, they attend. In our inclusion program, the inclusion TOSA, both of them, they have allocated time for collaboration with the general education. So they go over the students' progress, modification, and accommodation. In addition, they provide a one-to-one, and in addition to group support and training to the paraprofessional who are assigned in the full inclusion program. Our inclusion is growing and growing. Right now we have 54 students in the full inclusion program, and we have 34 students in our co-teaching, and for our preschool, we have about 26 students. So it is growing and we are very happy about it. And we include more and more PDs to meet the needs of our students, and also to have disability awareness to our general education teachers. Next one, please. So reclassification has been a kind of on our mind because some of our students, if they are in general education or like full inclusion or RSP, they fall on the same category as overall that we are doing, and it is already established by California Department of Education and also County Office of Education. However, for some group of our students, especially our students who are not meeting all the criteria, or students have some disability, like students who has selective mutism, how could that student pass speaking and reading part of the LPAC, for example? So these are the things that we have worked with the County Office of Education, and also we have worked with the California Department of Education. Based on that guidelines, we provided certain criteria that applies for reclassification of those group of students, and also our group of students who are profoundly cognitively disabled. I am going to pass the floor to Norma to go into details of the process that we put in place following the state and the county guidelines. Norma?
Yes. Next slide, please. So when I started in Franklin-McKinley, I know that we used to call this alternative reclassification. I noted on the earlier slide, it still says that. But there's been a lot of learning and redefining of this. And so really it isn't an alternative reclassification process. It is reclassification, but there are ways that we can look at our students using alternative measures if need be. So this is a flow chart. After the team in Franklin-McKinley, made up of the two program specialists, Miriam, Taylor Nguyen, who oversees reclassification, and then consultants from the county, we started to think that our staff really needed a flow chart, a flow map, something that helps them through the process. So I'm not going to explain this in detail, but I will give you the general impression of what this guideline or what this flow chart says. Basically, when we have an English learner who is also a student with disabilities, from the beginning, we have to decide, as the IEP team has to decide, how will we measure the growth in English language proficiency? And so you have to look at all the data, not just the results from the testing that happens when a student is identified as a student with disabilities, but you also have to look at the important data that comes with being an English learner. And that is always, that always includes the LPAC, or the state testing, the state test for English language proficiency. And so what we determined based on input from the California Department of Ed is that there were 3 different pathways that you could take in reclassifying a student with disabilities. And I'm going to go into those in a little bit detail in a few minutes. But the main thing at the top of this chart, where it says part 1 and part 2, is that you're looking at data. You're always measuring progress on the goals in the IEP, but you're also looking at the progress the student is making in learning English. And that includes the 4 domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. You always have to look at the 4 domains. We never say that a student with disability should be reclassified just because they're a student with disability. We don't want to do that. That's not legal. And so we always want to make sure that we're inclusive of all the data points for that student. And if the student is not able to meet reclassification criteria, then you're constantly measuring progress and updating the goals in the IEP. At a point where you decide that the student has made sufficient progress, and what we look at is the student making progress as an English learner or as a student who should be reclassified comparable to peers who have the same disability who are English proficient? And that's really the critical question. It's not because he has because the student is not able to speak English, we hold them back from being reclassified, but we say, is the student performing at a comparable level as an English proficient student? And if the answer is yes, then you move forward with the procedures and the processes that we've determined in Franklin-McKinley to move forward with reclassification. So next slide, and I'll go more into detail. So the three pathways are here. So a student who is a student with disabilities who is also an English learner must take the LPAC. That's where you start. You take the listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and the student takes it with or without accommodations. The IEP decides what accommodations will be provided to the student. If for some reason the student needs to have one of the domains tested in an alternative way, let's say the student can take the listening and speaking part of the LPAC, but maybe not the reading or writing because of the specific disability area. Or maybe the listening and speaking is the area that the student should not be tested with the LPAC. Then the IEP decides what will be used instead. So what domain will be tested through alternative means. So that's pathway number 2. The third pathway really is this: the LPAC is not meaningful and will not give us the information that we need to determine English language proficiency. So then we have to decide what alternative assessment will be provided in lieu of the LPAC. And what the State Department has been telling practitioners now for a few years is that you can't just use any assessment. It has to be an assessment that is aligned to the ELD standards. Next slide. So here are the 3 pathways again. And again, it's just a repeat of you're looking at data, all the data that comes with the student. And if you notice on the 3rd pathway there, the state is coming up with an alternative LPAC assessment. I believe it's being field tested this year. But in the meantime, we as a district have decided to use the assessment that the county office uses. They call it the SCALPS assessment, or it's the same assessment that uses in Ventura County, which is probably the assessment that most districts are using in the meantime as an interim assessment until we have the alternative LPAC in place for our students. Next slide, please. And so this is just in detail. Pathway number 1, remember that's a student who can take the LPAC with or without accommodations. And if you go to the next slide, please. Here is the recommended accommodations that can be recommended by the IEP team. So it's a nice little graphic that we use. So you can provide the student with universal tools like us taking more breaks. A student can use a highlighter in the test booklet. You can use scratch paper if they need to. Other designated supports might be maybe audio amplification or magnification. And then the accommodations that are listed here are available to students who also have a 504 plan. Again, this is the recommended matrix that is shared across practitioners across the state. And so an IEP team would need to decide what universal tools, supports, or accommodations the student deserves and is entitled to in this process. Next slide, please. So the second pathway is, of course, that one where maybe one of the domains needs an alternate test. And so then the IEP would decide what that alternate assessment might be. It may even include the SCOE-CALP assessment if that's what's best for the student's needs. And of course, we would have to look at students with selective mutism very closely and decide what makes the most sense for those students. Next slide, please. And the third pathway is for the student who has cognitive impairments that make it very challenging to administer the LPAC. And so the alternate assessment will be the SCOE-CALPS for now until the state makes the alternative LPAC available. Next slide, please. So what's happened so far? A lot of work has happened in the last 2 years around this effort. I know people were getting impatient with us saying, where's the alternative assessment or the reclassification process for students with disabilities? But we wanted to make sure that we all had shared understanding of the process, and we wanted to make sure that people were trained. So the training started on March 12th with the program specialists and Taylor Nguyen taking the lead. We are requiring that every special educator in the district be part of this training. And then the principals need to also be part of this training. And then for next year, there's a goal of sharing this training or having gen ed teachers be part of this as well. Next slide, please. So I'll let Miriam take it from here.
So the last part of our resolution was about developing that district-wide multi-tier system of support. It's the evidence-based system, the integrated system that is aligned with academic behavior and social emotional learning. And I'm sure after a year of living with pandemic, when the student returns, would be the number one on everybody's list. So we are diligently working right now to really expand the MTSS. We had some sites that, as I said, they are already piloting it, and based on the result, maybe material we have been using that we are going to be using district-wide right now. Next slide, please. So right now, as you know, the first year, 2018-19, was the awareness year. That's the year that district staff, they went to the training to know that what MTSS is. And since the leadership team at the district level, we already completed the readiness assessment. And we had 2 sites because the district was identified as the district with significant disproportionality with identifying Hispanic students under a specific learning disability. Those 2 sites are piloting the MTSS. And we are collaborating with a consultant agency or firm, Collaborative Learning Solution, in order to basically to launch the district-wide MTSS framework. Next, please. Next slide. So what is our next step between now and the year 2022? We continue meeting the needs of our staff who are coming on board. We want to have basically strengthening our onboarding special education staff. I think this year we really did. I think that this is the year we really did better than all the other years. Maybe we approach would be using the kind of the Zoom or distance to bring more people and being more right away. We can really address their issues or review the material. And also we're thinking about recording some of those sessions so they have access to it whenever they need to go back to. We do need to build in capacity of principals and assistant principals in understanding MTSS, referral process for students, especially students who are English language learners. We want that collaborative model that we started with the inclusion program to basically develop that, expand it to all levels. So like, the general education and special education constantly, they have that time to discuss the students' progress and adjust their instruction based on the students' accommodation and modification. And also reclassification, as Norma went through the whole thing, it has been really well received. We have those 3 sessions, and I'm sure as we are scheduling training for next year, we will offer it more and more. And the next thing, as I said, we are partnering with Collaborative Learning Solution in implementation or developing the framework for MTSS, and also that addressing the significant disproportionality. I think that's the last one. Oh, I do have more. I didn't know. So I guess I'm ambitious. We do, in order really to do a better job with our students, especially our inclusion. Our inclusion is growing and growing, and I am very proud of it, and I keep saying it. So we would like to hire another program specialist to oversee the inclusion program, and also to be able to carry some of the training for that particular group. We also would like to, and that will not only for the teachers, also for the students, because the more people are familiar with students' IEPs, their accommodation and modification, and attending those collaborative meetings, the better general education teachers can understand students with disabilities, their accommodation and modification, and when they are delivering their lessons, so they can use that differentiated instruction. Also, right now, based on the numbers we have, our students who are with disability who need assistive augmentative communication material and devices has doubled up. So we do need a speech and language pathologist who is specialized in, as we say, AAC, in order to provide professional development to staff and the families for the students to have a meaningful participation. I mean, their IEPs, they can implement if the student is not able to answer. The student is not able to participate in the classroom. The teacher doesn't know whether the student understood or not. But would we have somebody all the time be able to train and work with staff and their families, because it has to be both ways, will help our students. And also some of our students, they have really health need. We have students with chronic seizure, and this is the seizures that sometimes they need particular medication that is not, a teacher is not able to administer because of the lot of things goes with that medication. So we really need health assistant. If that student goes to general education, sometimes that will be a barrier, because what happens in the general education with 25 students, if the student has seizure, and if we have the health assistant to go with that student, they could really address the needs of the students, and students could participate in general education, or even in their own classroom. They have a meaningful education. They are able, we have the support that the student needs, and will be able to participate. Do I have another one? I think this is the last, that's the last one. I can create more job.
Thank you, Dr. Galvarin and Dr. Martinez-Palmer. So I just want to clarify too. So before we go, we don't have any public comments on this item, Superintendent Cruz?
Not on this item.
Okay. So board members, are there any comments or questions pertaining to this presentation?
Yeah, I had a couple. As far as the quarterly meetings that you're having with parents, how well assisted are those? Are they attending and actively participating?
That's a great question. Actually, since we have it on Zoom, we have lots of parents participating. Last meeting was April 1, and I had 30 parents attended. What we do, we have a general session. We always, and also we accommodate them with interpreter, Vietnamese and Spanish. So the general session, we talk to them, and then based on the topics, like one of the topics we were talking about last meeting, to get the students ready for in-person. Just the idea of the students carrying a mask for like even 2 hours, even just doing that. So we were working with the parents in 2 groups. We have our behaviors, the BCBAs, they had the presentation, and I had all the material translated in both languages. It was very well received. As I said, Zoom had some advantage and disadvantage, but as far as workshops, we get more and more participation, and maybe that's something we want to look into it.
So then is that something that will continue even once we go back to on-site?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It has, since I came, I have always had the quarterly meeting with parents. In person, it's always, especially winter time, it's very hard for parents, but I am so happy with Zoom. It's kind of like, they don't mind.
That's good to know. The other question was around MTSS. Out of our 16 schools, how many have already started implementing this, or has that yet to start?
Their pilot, go ahead, Superintendent.
Yeah, we've identified the 2 schools that are invested in that, and some of the schools have been looking at over the last year, sort of the components of MTSS. We've been focusing on the leadership to really understand what the framework is and what the components are. Next school year, we are launching the 5 schools that will be piloting what they call Tier 1 MTSS structures. And so that is what we have planned for next year.
Okay. The other question was around the TOSA. I guess I was under the impression we lost our special ed TOSA, or is that still vacant?
No, she is moving. She had a baby and she didn't have support. She's moving back to her home state, I should say, Chicago. So we're looking for another person, and it's really hard because she was a person that started her internship in our district. So it's really hard to find someone like her again.
Okay, so that's still vacant then, correct?
Yes, well,
Okay.
it will be vacant at the end of the school year, but we are posting now.
Okay. And then regarding the health assistants, how many would the district need to function?
Based on the students' IEPs that I have right now, we estimated 0.75 FTE, because those are the students within their IEPs, they need that. Unless we have other areas that I am not aware in general education. Superintendent Cruz, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so we also may need for some students that may not have an IEP, but have maybe a 504 due to having to monitor their sugar level, diabetic students. We have some students that need regular insulin injections and monitoring when they have breakfast and lunch. So we have been contracting with outside agencies for care of these students. And so our goal is to bring that into our CSEA unit by hiring health assistants that we can rely on and not have to contract services for these students all the time.
Did you have any other questions, Board Member Rosado?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Um,
I just want to thank Miriam for the presentation this evening. And maybe a real quick question. In terms of the ELL population that we have, and I know that we do have a number of students that would qualify for special education. And so I guess, I'm sure, I mean, you have your instruments out there to make sure that it's not based on their language, you know, but again, based on the fact that they're in need of special education services. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? You might have
Yes,
already, but want a little bit more.
No, I appreciate the question. Actually, this is the question we ask all the time. Our psychologists are very well trained. Our speech and language pathologists are very well trained. And we had recently a training with Dr. Alvera, just the language, the difference between language acquisition and language deficiency or impairment. So that was well received. There is another one coming by Dr. Juriska. So following up, you know, they work together. So it is sometimes, I think the referral comes and this was based on the interview that we did with the parents and also with the general education teachers for that are significant disproportionality. They have this myth that if the student is qualified for special education, they get more services, they get for language, which is not. And the student may have, unfortunately, because they have not met the academic. And that will give a kind of false positive if you want to look at it. And then because the scores, now we are looking at our quantitative data shows really low. Even in reality, maybe the student's IQ is normal. So then it falls under processing. And you know, when you speak another language, this phonological pattern of each language is different than American language. So as a result, the chances that the student qualified is greater. So we are hoping that by providing all this more professional development from Dr. Alvera or Juriska and some other, and also the County Office of Education and California Department of Education. So we have more awareness for our other administrators, maybe new administrators, general education teachers, to be a little bit more patient, give time, because it takes time for students to learn language. Just the communicative competence alone is 5 years. Imagine the academic language. So for a student who is starting kindergarten and coming from another language, has never been exposed to American language, it takes a long time to learn that. But sometimes that is considered as the student is not making progress. So we are, and I agree with you, we don't want to have any student identified as a student with disability. It's kind of like when it is not, we are doing everything we can to address that issue, but we don't want people think that they shouldn't refer because the student is English language learner, because there might be a disability. So we just purchased new assessment tools based on recommendation from Dr. Alvera. So they are using variety of assessment tools to make sure that indeed the student has a disability.
And I will just add, Board Member Sanchez, that part of that is also the why we want to move into an MTSS framework, because it's about making sure that the student's getting all the supports in early on, and ensuring that we have systems in place in which we are strengthening our SST process, our process for supporting students that we identify not making progress, so that we can rule out all the different things and not necessarily automatically assume that they need an IEP, but also ensuring that students that do need IEPs are also getting IEPs. So that's part of why we have been moving towards an MTSS framework, and we'll start with the 5 schools next year with that in mind.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that information. Very good.
Thank you. Any other questions, board members? Well, again, I just want to say thank you for the thorough explanation of especially the reclassification pathways, and just how mindful. I know it's taken some work to develop that, and I'm really excited to see our staff engage with that. So is the intent with that to be, the trainings happening this school year with the intent of those pathways being explored for the next school year? Okay.
They are actually implementing some of those pathways right now as they go through the training, but the full implementation definitely is recommended next year, because our next training is in April 21st, I believe that's the last one, and then definitely next year.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you both once again. What I'll ask is, I know I had submitted some clarifying questions on this item. If those could just be submitted for the record, Superintendent Cruz, and that way that information, those responses are captured. And just thank you again, both of you, Dr. Galvin and Dr. Martinez-Palmer, for your efforts on this item.
Thank you.
All right, so I know Superintendent Cruz, I just want to be sure the next item we have is 5.02. Do we have any public comments on that item?
We do not have any comments for 5.02.
Okay, so board members, given the number of individuals who wish to make a public comment on 5.03, I'd like to make a motion that we move 5.03 before 5.02, so that we can kind of move us along here.
Second.
Right, so it has been moved and seconded to move item 5.03 right before item 5.02. So 5.02 will be right after 5.03 now. So they're being flipped. So we'll go to a roll call vote for that. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Aye.
And my vote is aye. So we will now go, so that is passed. We will now go to item 5.03, which is now 5.02, the resolution number 2021-12, intention to accept a donation of property and construct a school on the property in the Communication Hill community. Superintendent Cruz?
Yes, and I'll turn it over to Jason for him to introduce the item.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Jason.
Great. For many years, Franklin-McKinley School District has been in discussion with the landowner, Robin, Rob Betancourt and developer KB Homes on constructing a school on donated property located on Communication Hill. This resolution presented to the board tonight, one is a response to a letter from the landowner, as well as will allow staff to take the next steps required for the district to negotiate and accept the donated property in question in order to build a school on Communication Hill. These steps include finalizing an agreement between the three parties that ultimately delivers to FMSD a property that can be accepted by the district and will allow the district to construct the school. Other steps include, but are not limited to, the completion of a California Environmental Quality Act study, environmental impact reports completed, mitigation services performed by KB Homes, coordination with the Department of Toxic Substance Control, gathering stakeholder input, so that includes the surrounding community of the proposed site, staff, Board of Education, community-based organizations, et cetera, to help design or provide inputs on the design for the new school, approval of the school design with the Department of State Architects, seeking California Department of Education approval to utilize the site for FMSD instruction, completing the bid process, and as you would imagine, next, starting the construction of the school. All of these steps are crucial to ensuring that FMSD can build and occupy a new school on Communication Hill that meets the needs of the community and avoids any avoidable litigation that could be posed against the district. So at this time, staff would recommend that the board accept the resolution as provided and presented tonight to publicly commit FMSD's intent to accept a donation of property and construct the school on donated property from the communication project.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Van. So at this time, I think we'll go to public comments and then come back for board discussion and any other questions on this item. Superintendent Cruz?
Yes, so Board President, since we do have 21 signed up for comment, do you want to?
Yes, so I'm going to go back to, so this is in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323. I am going to suggest that how many public comments do we have at this time?
We have 21 listed on here, so maybe 2 minutes.
And so if we could limit the comments to 2 minutes to help us.
So I'll put the timer and then we will mute the speaker at the conclusion of the 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm gonna, as I call, I'm gonna call out 3 names. So just so that the speakers are getting ready and know that your name is gonna come up. And then as soon as you're able to speak, I will start the timer. So I'm gonna call,
Superintendent Cruz, I just want to clarify for the public too, since I know we have audience watching. I will be turning off my camera. It's the first day of Ramadan, so I'm breaking my fast currently, but I'm still present and listening carefully. So just wanted to make that clear to everyone.
Yes, thank you. So we're gonna start with Jonathan Velarde, followed by Chuck Reed, followed by Ronan W. So Jonathan. There are some of you that logged in with your phone, and so we cannot tell if that's who's Jonathan. So we're gonna just move on to Chuck Reed.
Hi, this is Chuck Reed. I don't really have anything to add to the staff presentation. On behalf of the landowner, we're looking forward to working with the district to get a successful project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ronan W. Or Rohan W.
Yep, this is Rohan. Yeah, I just a question was a general question I had with regard to, and I'm not sure whether you guys have the answer to this. It was essentially, when do you think the school will be starting, you know, the physical starting of the school, when that, just a, you know, a projected date, what would be a projected date for that?
So I'll just answer that very quickly, but public comment is not for a back and forth between the board. So I will just say that there's no fixed timeline. This is the start of the negotiation, and until the district actually has possession of the property, there's no way for us to really have a timeline that we could project the date of when construction would start.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rohan.
We're gonna follow up with David Lee, Vibhav, and then John Cheng. So David Lee. And again, you don't show up on there, so you may be one of the phone.
So, and if it's on phone, do we know the number? I think it's star something for them to raise their hand potentially, so we know to unmute them.
Yeah. I don't know what that feature is. Let me check. Star nine. So if you are on your phone and I have called your name, if you could raise your hand by pressing star 9, then we will know then to allow you to unmute.
Can you repeat the name, Superintendent Cruz?
Yes, Jonathan Velarde, David Lee, Vibhav, and then John Cheng.
So again, if you heard your name called, if you could please press star 9.
Okay, I'm just going to move on to the next set of speakers. Jacqueline, Irene, and Amir. Jacqueline, if you could raise your hand if you're on here. Irene, Amir. Okay. All right, next set of speakers, Dang. I see Dan, okay.
All right, good evening. I just wanted to make a public comment. You know, as a pharmacist in the community, I received my education from the Franklin-McKinley School District, and it was a great experience. And as a resident of the local community here at Communications Hills, living less than 1 mile away from the proposed site, I am in support of this item and look forward to the school board to accept the donation and take the necessary steps for the school. I yield my time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Shahabuddin, Miadul, and Jason.
So again, if you're on the phone, be sure to select star 9 so we can unmute you.
Erica, Sammer, and Jen Chang. I think Jen is on, I can see their name. You can now unmute, Jen.
Jen, do you wish to make a public comment on this item?
Sorry, I'm just here to listen.
Okay, thank you. Erica del Rosario. You can unmute yourself, Erika.
Yeah. Hi there. Erica doesn't have a comment, but I'm her husband, Shahabuddin. My name was called earlier, but I didn't know how to unmute, but now I was able to.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead and offer you.
yeah. So again, we don't have any questions. We had one question, but that was already answered. I think about the proposed date when the school would be open. So if I can ask the follow-up question, like let's assume that the proposition gets approved by the end of this year. So if we just assume that the construction will start next year, then how long would it take to finish and the school to be started? Like 2 years, 5 years, something like that?
So I'll just say that construction is not that fast. There's a lot of work that would have to be done in design, in approval, and so there's just no opportunity for us to start construction next school year.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
So I have Samer and then Christina Diep. So if you are on the phone and you've heard your name, you can do *9 to raise your hand so we know that that's you. Okay, I'm going to move on to Janice and Susie.
Hi, my name is Janice. I am a current resident of Communication Hills. I just moved here with my husband last year, and we moved here in this community looking forward to building a family and raising our kids here, and to have the ability to have a school here on the hill is extremely beneficial to me and my husband. It's just us, and being able to walk to our school and just get our kids and then come back home, it would just be nice to have that close by. So I am in 100% support of having this in the upcoming future of the hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. So we have Susie and Justin.
Justin, are you there?
Yeah, you called Susie first, but since
Go ahead.
Go ahead. We'll see if we can get a hold of Susie in a little bit.
my name is Justin. My wife and I also just moved into this community last year, and just to keep it short, we would also be really happy if the school could be put up. The proposed location is just a few blocks away from where we moved in as well, and just wanted to make our public comment that we would love if you guys moved forward with the plan to take the donation and go on with the build. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
So again, the last one, we have Susie and Chatal.
So if you are on the phone, be sure to select *9 so we know to unmute you.
No other speakers were present.
Okay. So we will go ahead and I'll open it up for any questions or comments from the board.
Just a quick one. Oh, did you want to go, George, or?
Go ahead. I'll go after.
Yeah, just a quick question regarding, so this is donated land now, and that's being offered. And so is this a different location that the board had discussed previously when we touched on this topic of building a school in Communication Hills? Is that correct?
It's still the same location.
Ah,
The
okay.
location hasn't changed.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
George?
No, I just wanted to say that, of course, I'm very, very much in support of this item. And I've been on the board, as you know, 26 years now. So I have gone through 4 superintendents, and of course this in terms of the land being given to the district, that started back with Larry Aceves, who was the superintendent at that time. And of course, John Porter worked on that also. And of course, now we have Superintendent Cruz working on the item. So I think it'd be a tremendous benefit to have a school up there. And as the parents were expressing, and I'm sorry we had communication was not the best, but you could hear that the comments made in terms of moving forward with the school but starting with today. And I know today's a small step in the whole process, but at least it kind of gets us over the starting line, and I'm kind of, looking forward to it. And I hope we can support this item and move forward. And I was glad to hear from former Mayor Chuck Reed in terms of being on board in terms of moving forward and being there to support us, help us in whatever way that they can to get this project completed. And those are the comments. Thank you very much.
And I have a comment as well. Okay, so this is at least 10 years in the making. I know that George is aware of what's been happening. And since the 10 years that I've witnessed us even visiting the site, this is not a small step. This is a major step, because we have parents who have lived on Communication Hill since then, who had hoped their children would go to a school on the hill there, and now their children are now in high school or later years. So we need to think about the future of all of those new families that are coming into that community, so that they don't have to drive down the hill and come to schools within our district that are by the, like Shirakawa or Dahl or other schools around the area, that they can, like one parent just said, or one future parent just recently said today, walking to the school would be such a major pleasure for them, rather than driving their children to a school off of the hill. I am fully supportive of the resolution and fully supportive of developing a process that we can build something or place a school there as quickly as possible, using the most efficient process that we can, and as well as keeping our students safe. So I'm going to definitely support this resolution.
Thank you, Board Member Rodriguez. Assistant Superintendent Van, I did have a question about in terms of what this commitment will do and where it'll place us in the timeline. So with the exception of the donation, what is the immediate next steps for the district, and what can we anticipate as the next step for this?
So the next immediate step is for the district to work with the landowner as well as the developer to come up with an agreement on how the land would be donated to the district. There are certain things that the landowner and the developer would like to do to the site to make it a more agreeable site for us to build a school on Communication Hill, so that we can utilize the property as much as possible, potentially move power lines that we've talked about before, and essentially build a pad, if you will, a mitigated site, so that the cost and the likelihood of having a school built on Communication Hill is reasonable and possible.
And so on that point, a follow-up question I had was, so in terms of getting, the California Department of Ed to provide us the clearance for this, what will that process look like when it comes to negotiations with the property owner and developer?
So in essence, we need to make sure that we have gone through all of the necessary studies on the property to figure out what type of mitigation needs to be performed. We will then take that information and work with the landowner so that he and the developer can work on mitigating the site. So there are naturally occurring asbestos at the site. They can bring in new dirt, basically cap the site so that it's a better site to build a school on. All of these studies that we've started, like a Title V study, to identify any hazards that are on the site, have been identified, and we use that information to sit with the landowner and the developer to say, these are the things that need to be considered for us to accept this site. These things need to be taken care of. And then we work on a way to get that done in a most economical way so that when we want to go to the CDE to officially say, hey, we now own this site. It has been donated to us. The district has accepted it. This is how the site is. We are guaranteed to get an approval from the CDE to say that, yes, the site is ready and available for you to use to build a school on it.
Thank you for that clarification. And I guess I just want to state too that I am fully in support of this project. I also just want to be sure that as a district, we're not getting ourselves into a situation where, you know, for whatever reason, the CDE is saying that we can't develop on this land to build a school site. So I want to be sure that we have we're taking the necessary steps to make sure that we're working and encouraging the landowner and developer to work with us as a district so that the site is prepared as quickly as possible so that we can actually develop a school there.
Yes, Board President, thank you for that. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, the response in terms of the timeline is unknown, right? Because there are, well, this is a major step. I do agree with Board Member Rodriguez. This is a major step for this district because we hadn't taken the step to actually accept the land. We've always wanted and talked about building the school there. But this is the actual formal step to actually start to negotiate the acceptance of the land, but more importantly, as Mr. Van has indicated, is under the conditions that we believe we can get approval of CDE for us to build it there, and that's going to take some time, and so that's why, you know, the timeline is really uncertain because we need to first negotiate those conditions and then be able to get approval, and then those things have to be done. The major thing is the moving of those power lines. That is something that is going to take working with PG&E and a major shift of those power lines to make sure that the site is ready for us to build on.
Thank you.
Okay, and so I'd like to move that we adopt resolution number 2021-12, resolution of intention to accept donation of property and construct a school on the property of the Communication Hills community.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so item 5.02, which was previously 5.03, resolution 2021-12, has been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion on this item?
Yeah, I do have one other comment to make. I noticed that the letter from I guess it was authored by Chuck Reed on behalf of the MTA properties and regarding this resolution. I do notice that the letter was written on May 27th, 2020, and we actually had a little workshop on this during the summertime. And so now we're looking at the following year, which is almost 9 months later. I hope that we don't spend this much time between steps that we're taking, that we can work as efficiently and as diligently as possible to get this process going a lot quicker.
I just had a question regarding that too. Superintendent, in terms of navigating all the different ins and outs of, you know, getting the land you know, acquired and getting all those things squared away, the power lines and all that. Is there someone that we would hire to do that, to help us navigate, or is Jason? We get him. I think Jason has a lot of stuff on his plate. Is there an individual or a group of individuals who maybe work in this area that we could go ahead and bring on board to help us navigate those different areas? What do you think?
Yeah, I can start one, and then you can add. So we've already contracted with School Site Solutions, who has a lot of history and experience with dealing with opening a new school and identifying all the hazards and so on and so forth. In addition, we're always going to be looking out for additional contractors who have specialties in the areas of dealing with electromagnetic fields. So we've worked with PlaceWorks, obviously, to do various studies on that and how that impacts the way we're going to construct the school. So we'll always be looking for partners on that. And obviously, we'll work with our law firms that we've worked with in the past, like DWK, to help make sure that we produce a contract or an agreement between the three parties that makes the most sense for all of us. So we'll always look for partners in those areas. And obviously, we're going to have to work with PG&E to make sure that the power lines are addressed appropriately. And obviously, we're working with the CD already. We've already had several discussions with the CD, some in person, some on Zoom, some via email, to make sure that we're addressing all the issues ahead of time prior to accepting the land.
And just while the letter was dated a year ago, I can tell you that there's been ongoing work, so we hadn't stopped. As Jason just mentioned, we have been working with our consultants the contracts that you've approved in regards to looking at all the mitigating factors and getting us to this point where we believe, based on their recommendation of all the studies that they've made and presented to us, that we can move forward still with those conditions that we've outlined in negotiating. So Jason, Gabriel, and the team have been working all along in working with CDE in trying to make sure that we could bring this to the board with the confidence that we could actually move forward with the project.
Okay, Juan, I only say that because last summer during our board retreat, when we discussed this, and we also talked about the power lines last summer as well. So George, that was discussed last summer. But Juan, I say this because the letter was not shared with us at our board retreat last summer. I don't recall seeing it, was it?
No, you're right.
Why wasn't it shared with us so that we could at least start on a resolution last fall to get this to get a commitment there in the first place?
The only thing that I could say is that at that time, we didn't have the studies and the CDE information for us to feel confident to bring this resolution as we are doing today. We have had ongoing discussions with CDE, and the last one was just several weeks ago, where we feel now we can move the project forward, and that's what we're bringing it to the board for.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. I just wish that you would let the board know that you received this letter so that we could be made aware of it and maybe share any other ideas or options that we would want to share at the time. We have parents who have children there that are waiting to go attend to a school there on the hill, Communication Hill, and I hope that we can build their confidence in that we are going to make this happen if that's our intent to do so. Okay, thanks. That's it.
Thank you, Rudy. The only other question I had, and then I'll jump back just to be sure there's no other comments or questions from other board members. In terms of the financial responsibilities that we would have here, do we currently have the funds to, should we, as we move through to the next step, do we have the funds to be able to start, potentially the first phase of this project?
Yes, we do have the funds to start the first phase of the project. Obviously, we haven't outlined all the potential phases that we could utilize, but one of the things that we've been talking about with our architects is the first phase would be TK through 3, with an admin building, a multi-purpose room, RSP room, and other things that are obviously necessary to run a school, parking lot, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be the first phase. That'd probably be the most expensive phase because you're setting up all of the underground utilities to make sure that we have power, water, and so on and so forth. We expect that first phase to be fairly significant. And so when we put this agenda together, we said that It would be wise for the district to earmark 50 million of the current bond measure to make sure that we have enough money to cover the first phase and part of phase 2, which would be from 4th grade to 6th grade. But again, there's a lot of discussions to be had, a lot of input to be received to make sure that this phase makes the most sense. We've had a small group talk about this, but we'd love to get input from additional stakeholders.
And Jason, that was the reason we just passed this last bond measure last fall, correct?
It's one of the major reasons for passing the bond measure.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to remind the board of that.
So, and if I could just remind, I know it's a little bit different since we're on Zoom, but I just want to make sure that we're able to hear all the different board members' voices. And so if you guys could just wait till I call on you so we can make sure that everyone's voices are heard. So thank you for that, Assistant Superintendent Mann. I think it's definitely reassuring to hear that, we have the funding necessary for this project, and it's just a matter of looking at the next steps and phases for this. Are there any other questions or comments from board members?
Nope.
Yes, how soon can we receive an update regarding this?
I don't have meetings set up yet with the landowner and the developer, but we hope to provide updates when there are significant milestones that have been met to the board as soon as possible.
There's no other comments or questions. We'll go ahead and move to the roll call vote on this item. Board member, so this is, we are voting on item 5.02, which was previously 5.03, resolution 2021-12, intention to accept a donation of property and construct a school on the property in the Communication Hill community. So I'll move to the roll call vote. Board member Sanchez.
Aye.
Board member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Clerk Rosado.
Aye.
And my vote, Maymanoff-Slaberta, is aye. So that motion passes. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Mann and community for those comments. We will now go to item 5.03, which was previously 5.02, 2021 update on in-person cohort instruction and summer school programs. Superintendent Cruz, are you starting us off with this?
Yeah, so both myself and Dr. Martinez-Palmer will be giving you the update. As you recall, the last board meeting, the board approved the in-person cohort instruction for our pre-K through 6th grade. And we've been working diligently in getting everything in place for a tentative start of April 19th. Can you go to the next slide, Summer? And so this is what the board approved last meeting. And we have been working with our certificated staff, our classified staff, in identifying volunteers to come in. That was one of the things that two criteria that the board wanted us to consider in developing this was, one, that it was going to be on a voluntary basis, that the classified and certificated staff were going to be asked to volunteer, and that also students and families would have the option of volunteering, and nobody was going to be forced to come in person. And then the other one was that the students were to remain with their teacher. Those were the major components of our in-person return to in-person, based on the staff input and based on the parent input. Next slide. And so this is where we're at. As of this Friday, 39 teachers had volunteered to come and provide in-person instruction to up to 15 of their students. And so the model is that in the morning, students will be coming in, and teachers will provide 2 hours of in-person instruction. Families have the option of picking up their child after that and going home and doing asynchronous at home, or they can stay until 3 o'clock in one of our creating a choral learning pod for students that are remaining, and until 3 and working on their asynchronous work at that time. And you can see there the number of staff members that have chosen to volunteer to come back by school site. 6 of those 39 are students, are teachers that serve our STC students. We have 27 paraprofessionals, various from general ed and both also special education paraeducators that have volunteered to come back with either their teacher or just in general. And some of them have also volunteered to work beyond their work time and support a learning pod for students that are staying for the rest of the day. Next slide. So what was outstanding was the middle school model. The middle school model, because of the changing of teachers and having 6 teachers or 7 teachers if we are at Bridges, did not work with the model of the PK through 6. So we went back to the middle school principals. We went back to the committee, and this is what they proposed. That the students would stay in their regular synchronous distance learning instruction schedule, and the K-8s, their schedule ends before 12:30, and then the other middle school at 1 o'clock and CCA at before 1:30. So that we would then on 2 days, on Mondays and Fridays, for the students that are coming in for choral in-person instruction or support, they will have an opportunity in the afternoons on Monday and Fridays to get intervention from teachers that are coming in. They're volunteering to come in on Mondays and Fridays to provide intervention, to provide enrichment, to provide an opportunity for them to get something other than in the computer. And so that is sort of what we have for our middle school students. And so what we're doing is providing choral learning ponds. For Sylvandale, they didn't have any. And for CCA, they haven't had any all year long. So that is the additional support that we would provide for middle school. Next slide.
So I met with the preschool that we had some teachers volunteer to do in-person preschool. And so Miriam and I met with those teachers and brainstormed what would it look like for preschool students, remembering that they usually have about 10 students or fewer than 10 students. Up until now, the students have been doing distance learning in very small groups, circle time, individual student support online. And so we brainstormed what that might look like, and we came up with 2 options, and that would all depend on how many parents, how many students would agree for in-person. And so this would be if all 10 students or 9 students or 8 students, if there were a majority of the classroom who would agree to in-person, the teachers agreed that they would split that group in 2 because the students haven't been in person, and so they may have more needs, and because they need time to get acclimated to being in person with their teacher and peers. And so, for example, if you had, let's say, 8 students, you could do 4 students 2 days a week on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the other 4 students on Thursday and Friday. And so you're basically splitting your in-person student group in teaching them in the morning for 2 hours. Then teacher would get a break, students would be picked up or be transported home. And then the teacher would meet with the students whose maybe the parents did not agree to in person. And so would meet with those students in the afternoon to provide support according to the IEP goals. The second option, next slide, was for a class. Maybe there's a very small class. Maybe there's only 4 or 5 students in that class already, or maybe the teacher, the parents that were willing to have their students come in person was only like 3 to 5 students. Then that teacher would provide in-person instruction 5 days a week because it's a very small class. I'm sorry, 4 days a week, because on Mondays they don't meet with students. That's their assessment day. And so they would meet with the students for 2 hours, Tuesday through Friday, have their break, and then they would meet in the afternoon with the rest of the students. So those are the 2 options. And so the decision would be based on how many students the teachers would be teaching. We will be having four teachers doing preschool SDC. Two of the teachers came from Stonegate, and guess what? Stonegate's going through construction. So fortunately, we have facilities at McKinley for preschool SDC, and the teachers at that site who were not going to be teaching in person graciously were willing to allow those teachers to teach in their classrooms. So the preschool SDC program will be taking place at McKinley, and one of the classes will be at Shirakawa as part of the program that already exists there. Next slide. That's Mr. Cruz.
Yes. So here you could see what we currently have in learning pods to the left, serving 528 students. And you got some of this information when America from Coral came and presented the work that we've been doing. To the right is what we're proposing in order to support the students that are coming in person and are asking to stay until 3 o'clock. In addition to the students whose teachers are not coming in and also need in-person support. That number actually has increased since Friday when we posted the agenda. We are going to be able to serve up to 990 students. This morning I met with Coral, with America, and we've been working closely on how many staff members are available to start working. We've worked with HR in identifying some substitute teachers so that we are able to meet the needs that the schools have in regards to in-person either learning pods or in-person instruction. So we're very excited about potentially serving close to 1,000 students in person in our classrooms starting the 19th. Next slide.
So we've been working very quickly, and I have to actually give a big shout out to the principals who've been working with their teachers, making sure they have accurate lists of who are the kids who will be participating in person. But the district office, we prepared some letter templates to help the staff reach out to parents, to explain to parents what would be happening for kids, both in person and also students who would remain in distance learning. But the most important outreach that took place was actually the personal phone call, is really answering questions and explaining to the parents over the phone, change in schedule, how the program would be rearranged, making sure that parents understood that their child would be taught by their classroom teacher, which was one of the requests of the teachers, but also something that we heard loud and clear from the parents, is that they really didn't want a change of teacher at this point of time in the year. And then I created a frequently asked questions document available in 3 languages, which is now available on our website. Next slide. And so moving forward, a lot has happened since the last time we met at this board meeting. This week, the groups of the students are being finalized. Mr. Cruz has been working very hard on the Coral part of this component and getting training, optional training for teachers. PassageWorks will be doing a training this week as well as a safety training. We want to make sure that all the teachers and the staff who will be working with our students in person understand all of the safety procedures and protocols, what to do when a student doesn't want to wear a mask, what will the entrance procedures be like, how will the cleaning take place. So all of that will be shared this week, and that will be a required training. And then we also have a training with PassageWorks, which is an organization that will really help our teachers understand kind of the impacts of the pandemic and what teachers might be looking for in their students and how to address their social emotional needs as they return into the classrooms. We want to make sure that teachers don't start with the reading and the writing lesson right away, but rather really welcoming our students, really working on personal connection and team building for the classroom. And we are, I think it says here tentative, but I think we're ready to go on April 19th. I also want to give a shout out to Jason and his staff because they've been working very hard on preparing those classrooms for Monday. Next slide.
So as we prepare to for students, a greater number of students to return, and I say a greater number because we, as you noted, 500 plus students have been in our schools in the learning ponds since September. But obviously this is more students, more staff. And so with that, we have begun the transition for all staff to start returning. All the support staff, obviously our certificated staff are still provided the opportunity to work remotely, in the classified staff that are working with those teachers also. But management and all other support staff are starting to phase in the return to in-person, on-site regular hours, unless they have a situation that then they have to connect with HR to go through an interactive process. So you can see here we have 3 phases in which we intend to try to return to whatever normal is going to be from now on, normal operations, as we begin to bring back more students and more staff to our school sites. Next slide.
So at this time, we also wanted to update the board on summer plans. So under the leadership of Sarah Feldman, she's been very busy planning a very expanded summer school program that we've offered in the past. So our hope is to serve up to 1,000 students. We are telling families that anybody who wants summer school we will offer summer school. In the past, there's usually been a criteria for selecting students who needed specific skills in reading. And we only offered the program for K-3, and in the past we did Elevate at middle school. Well, this year we're expanding it to entering kinder through 8th grade students. We are keeping classes sizes small to 15. We are also offering a distance learning option for families that would like summer learning, but maybe not comfortable yet with sending their children to a campus. The focus will be literacy and math, but more importantly, again, the social emotional learning and the personal connection and welcoming our students back onto a campus with peers. We will continue to offer Elevate Math and Computer Science for middle school. We will continue to serve meals. And again, Choral will continue to serve our students by offering enrichment in the afternoon for the students who participate in person. And here are the dates for that program. And so right now we are working on the application process for families, and that should be going out by Friday or early next week. Next slide, please. Extended learning extended year is also planned. There's 1 extra week for ESY for students with special needs. The location of that program will be at Franklin. Transportation is being provided, and all of the services for ESY will be in person. And so the IEP is really what indicates whether the student is eligible for ESY or not. I also wanted to let the board know that the sites for the general education summer school program will be Santee, Windmill Springs, Bridges, and then we're offering Breakthrough at Larone. Thank you. I think that was the last slide.
Thank you, Martinez Palmer. Was there a comment, Superintendent Cruz?
Yeah, I just wanted to finish off the summer sort of comments in regards to our intent is really to offer our students an opportunity to come onto our campuses and away from our screens. And so that's really the goal. We are going to be also looking for other partners that are able and willing to provide even the type of summer camps that are safe, so that we can really offer something for everybody. So just more to come as we are securing some of these other opportunities, because we know that the best transition to August is to start to have students leave their homes, come into their classrooms and away from the screens, and start to really work with them in that transition. So that's really been the focus of our planning for summer as that bridge between, from distance learning to full in-person in August.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions on this item or comments?
Yes. Oh, so go ahead, George.
Well, I just wanted to just to thank all the teachers, all the para educators, so on, classified staff for helping out. I really have my doubts that we would have a number to go ahead and be able to sustain such a program, but it seems like we definitely do. So that's really, really good news tonight to hear that we're moving forward with a number of individuals that have come forward. So that's very, I was very, very glad to see that. Thank you.
Yeah, board member Sanchez, thank you for that. And and I've mentioned her name a couple of times, but I do want to thank also America from Coral and her staff and the principals. They worked very hard 2 weeks ago and then last week to really identify students and staff, and America and their team has said, look, we're going to make it happen. And so I'm really thankful for her partnership, Catholic Charities and Coral, to be able to, be here and say that we're going to be serving up, close to 1,000 students. It's in large part because of the partnership we have with Coral. I just can't say enough about how appreciative I am of the work they're doing.
Yeah, I also wanted to echo what George mentioned. I'm glad to see the district was able to mobilize so quickly to accommodate all these students in such a short period of time. So then going back to the presentation, I know for summertime, the district is committing to being able to support 1,000 students. Are you keeping it open to the possibility of extending support to additional students if more students sign up for summer school?
As Mr. Cruz has told me, we will take as many students as we can. He tells me the door is going to be open, but we also need to make sure we have enough teachers.
So more teachers, the more we can accommodate. At the end of the day, what and we talked about this, if we don't have certificated staff, that doesn't mean we can't have programs like summer type camp programs. And so I've already, talked to America and said, look, if we don't have enough classrooms, then we'll still utilize your staff. We'll just utilize them in a different way to provide summer camp type activities for students to come every day for the number of days that we have. And I'm looking for other partnerships. We just received a whole list of summer camp type programs that are free for community members that are being put together. And so we're going to be looking at how we leverage those and share that with families as well. So, if we can provide support to every single child in our school district, that would be our goal.
Okay. The other question was, and maybe too early to ask, I guess this was the first week where students were back on site, right? How is it, or not yet?
No, they were back from spring break for those that were in the learning pods.
Okay.
So on the 19th will be our first day where our teachers and students will be in classrooms together. That'll be our first day.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Those were all the questions.
And I just have a comment and a few questions as well. First of all, thank you to, actually everyone, the teachers, our district leadership who have put this plan together and helped, and also Coral who has helped reach out to parents and making this work. I'm a little bit saddened about the middle school grades, but I can see why it's a challenge because of the periods, having the multiple classrooms, and it just makes it a lot harder. So 2 questions I have. The number one is, the governor has announced that we could be fully reopened by the end of June. So does that mean that in the fall, we're going to looks like we could be fully reopened?
Yes, I do believe that all indications are that we will be fully open with no opportunity for distance learning. The bills that allow for districts to get the funding, even though we are not providing the same instructional minutes and we are not taking attendance in the way that we get our apportionment, are expiring at the end of the school year. Unless those were to be extended, we would have to come back to full operation, meeting the minimum instructional minutes in person in order for us to get the apportionment that is part of what our budget. And with
That's for state funding though, not for federal.
correct. Well, yes, that we our state funding is based on the apportionment in terms of.
Right. There's no strings attached to the federal.
No, not if you're talking about the stimulus. No, there's no strings to the.
Right.
As far as we know right now, the last one, Jason reminds me that we still don't know all the specifics, but you're right. Those are we can consider them sort of like general fund type funds. So with the governor announcing that in the 15th, there's all indication that we need to plan for full return for August.
Okay. Then my second question is, and I like to be optimistic, but what if this happens? What if we move back up to the purple tier, which is widespread? Are we going to reverse our school reopenings and go back to distance learning, because if it's like other states in our country that have gone up to that level?
So the public health guidelines indicate that once you are operating in person, if you revert back to the more restrictive category, you don't have to suspend or close your campuses. What you have to do is continue to monitor and then close pods if you have an infection, and then close the site if you have, remind me, Jason, 2 or 3 within a period of time, and then you have to close the site. And that is in accordance with public health, and businesses as well would operate that way. So that's sort of the guidance that we get from public health in regards to once you are open, you go through those steps of monitoring, but you don't actually have to close when you revert back to the more restrictive tier.
Okay, thank you. That's good news. Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Well, I just want to echo, the comments from the other board members as well. I think the way that we as a district and our leadership, every member of our district, really, from parents to our administrators and teachers and classified, everyone has really come together to mobilize this, with such a quick turnaround, and then with Coral really helping, support our capacity as well, and just helping us reach as many students and families as possible. There's certainly, a lot of thank yous to go around. Looking forward to, opening our campuses for more in-person opportunities on the 19th, which is coming up really quickly. The only other question I had, yeah, right, fingers crossed, everything goes well. The only other question I had was in terms of COVID protocols. How are we getting, I know Norma mentioned, the frequently asked questions for parents and doing a lot of the soft points and calling parents and making sure that they understand a lot of the changes that are going to happen. So how are we how will students and families also be able to understand what the COVID protocols are, especially as we work towards increasing our number of in-person students?
Jason, you want to?
Yeah, we can, one of the things that we can do is provide families flyers that have been produced by the Santa Clara County Public Health Department, which go over the safety protocols when there has been somebody that has tested positive within the classroom or is a close contact. We can share that with the families. That's readily available on the Santa Clara County Public Health Department. And we're also going to be putting together a safety protocol video for both families and for staff, so that everyone is on the same page as to what happens when somebody's positive or there's a close contact.
Yeah, and I believe that that video was recorded today so that, people can see, visually see the check-in process and be able to share that with the staff on Thursday, and then we'll, obviously share that with families. Part of that check-in is we're using company nurse so that the families pre-screen, have those questions that we all are now very familiar with. And then therefore they're coming in with that they've already checked off all those boxes and they're clear to come in. If they forget, they will be clear. They will go through those questions before they enter the facility, and then they can be let in. In addition to that, obviously we'll continue with the testing of the adults every other week. And then we are working on testing students 4th through 8 on site at least twice during the next 8 weeks that will be here in terms of the school year. That's a self-administered test. That's why we decided that 4th through 8 would be an appropriate age level that they would be able to do it effectively. And then, we will get the results for students, and that will be no charge to the families.
With parent consent?
Correct. Yeah.
It will also be important for the teachers to do lessons in that very first week of what, hand washing, mask wearing. I mean, that will have to be part of what they do on those very first days.
Yes.
So do we have any of those materials developed, for teachers and staff to go through for any additional, for our choral students who are already in the program, they, obviously have gone through the process of understanding what it's like to be on a campus interacting with individuals.
Yeah.
But for other students, do we have resources that'll be shared?
I'm actually researching those resources. I'm sure they're out there. It's just a matter of identifying them. I'm sure there's videos and lessons that we will share with our staff.
Great.
And one of the things that we're leveraging, obviously, is the fact that we do have a lot of now experience with Choral, having been operating since September in person. So we're really taking a lot of what Choral has been doing and really building out that for our staff as well. Jason, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that the County Office of Education has already put together some public service announcement videos that are very short, very straight to the point, on how to wear a mask, how to socially distance, how to wash your hands, that we can also utilize and share with our families and staff.
Thank you.
I did have one more question. And thank you, Jason, for sharing the county resources, because they also have tutorials, pictorials, things that you can print and hand out as well. It's very resourceful. I do have one more question. Teacher vaccinations, we're not requiring all teachers to be vaccinated, right?
No, that is not.
We can't do that, can we?
Well, you could, as a board, if you wanted to take that stance. You would be probably the only board right now that would take this stance. The state and the federal government and county have not indicated that this will be a vaccine that is required as part of employment.
Do we know how many of our teachers are vaccinated? Or is that something we can't capture?
Well, we've captured some through some surveys that Jason has sent out, as we had tried to connect staff members with a quick turnaround in vaccines that are available, that are sent to us. So I don't know that we can have an accurate count, but Jason, did you want to share any of that information?
I'm looking for that information right now that I sent. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
You don't have to answer it. We can get that answer later. But we're not even going to be requiring anything like a vaccine passport or anything, are we?
No.
Okay, got it. Okay, thanks.
Along that line, I know the vaccines are out, so on, but in terms of the testing, are we going to require a testing of staff when we come back in person? Is that something we might look at?
So right now, we are requiring of any employee that comes into the buildings, even if it's once a day, once a week, they're required to test every other week. we will assess that, for next fall, and see if that is still a need, and therefore we will have to think about how we do that on a larger scale. We've been able to manage that right now because we don't have everybody returning, so therefore not everybody's testing. And we've been able to utilize staff like bus drivers, child nutrition services that, are not necessarily doing their regular duties to do that, because we have to administer that. The company just process the test and doesn't actually have staff on the ground to administer the test. So we will assess that through the summer as we're getting ready for August, based on the conditions and based on the recommendation from public health in regards to the safety, mitigation factors that we have to still consider by then, right? Because we don't know what the condition will be then. After everybody's vaccinated and all these things, we still don't know.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that information.
Are there any other questions or comments on this item? And there were no public comments on this item, Superintendent Cruz.
Let me double check just in case something didn't come up. No comments.
Okay. And this is for information only, is that correct?
It is for it's for your approval of the middle school.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And the preschool.
In the preschool cohort.
So with that, board members, if there aren't any other questions or comments, I'll accept a motion on this item.
This item would be 5.03, correct then? Is that what we're looking at, or 5.02?
It was 5.02, now 5.03.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to move on item 5.03, the 2021 update on in-person cohort instruction and summer school programs.
Second. Your motion was to approve it, right?
That's correct, to approve that.
Okay, I didn't hear the approve. Okay,
Correct.
then I second that.
Right, so the in-person cohort instruction, item 5.03 has been moved and seconded. The recommendation to move forward with that. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Aye.
And my vote, Memo Nafs Alberta, is aye, so that motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for all of that information. We will now move on to item 6, consent items. And so this is going to apply for consent items 6 and 7. Consent items for 6 under 25,000. Members of the public may address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with board bylaws 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. And then board, are there any public comments on these items, Superintendent Cruz?
No comments.
So board members, let me know if you'd like to pull any items from item 6 or item 7.
No.
Move to approve consent items 6.01 and 6.02.
Second.
All right, items 6.01 and 6.02 have been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Aye.
And my vote, Memo Nafs Alberta, is aye. So that motion passes. We will go to item 7. And there's item 7.01. Members of the public may address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with board bylaws 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. Is there any comments on this, Superintendent Cruz?
No comments.
Board members, is there anyone who would like to pull this item? Otherwise, we'll move to a roll call vote, or I'll accept a motion on this item.
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 7.01, ratification of classroom furniture procurement for Stonegate Elementary School from Verco Manufacturing Incorporated.
Second.
All right, item 7.01 has been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Aye.
And my vote, Mimona of Alberta, is aye. That motion passes. We will go to item 8, action items. Item 8.01, the personnel report. And there is no personnel addendum at this time, so I will accept a motion on this item.
I move to approve item 8.01, the personnel report.
Second.
Right, item 8.01, the personnel report has been moved and seconded for approval. We'll move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez,
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
Clerk Rosado,
Aye.
and my vote, Mimona of Alberta, is aye. That motion passes. We will now go on to item 8.02, the March 23rd, 2021 board meeting minutes. Board members, hopefully you've gotten a chance to review those minutes. I'll accept a motion when you're ready.
I move to approve item 8.02, the March 23, 2021 board meeting minutes.
Second.
Right, item 8.02, the March 23rd, 2021 board meeting minutes has been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call votes. Board Member Sanchez,
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez,
Yes.
Clerk Rosado,
Aye.
and my vote, Mimona of Alberta, is aye. That motion passes. We will now go to item 8.03, the disclosure of collective bargaining agreement with the Franklin-McKinley Education Association, FMEA.
Okay, I will take that one. In accordance with AB 1200 and AB 2756, the district must submit the disclosure of a collective bargaining agreement for any changes to a current agreement that has a fiscal impact on the district. The disclosure that's here tonight reflects the fiscal impact of a 2% salary increase that is retroactive to July 1, 2020, and also shows the impact of a one-time salary schedule bonus, if you will, of $4,500. That's based on per FTE numbers. So it'll be prorated if a person is not a 1 FTE for services provided during the 2021 school year. This one-time bonus will be applied to all FMEA members, all CSEA members, Classified School Employee Association members, and management personnel. The financial impact to the district for this item is $4.7 million in fiscal year 2021 and approximately $1 million for each of the next 2 fiscal years. Attached to this board agenda item also is the review letter from the Santa Clara County Office of Education. And based on the letter, the district will be able to support this increase in compensation and remain fiscally solvent. At this time, staff recommends that the Board of Education approve this disclosure.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Van. Board members, are there any questions or comments on this item?
Just a quick comment that I'm glad to see the agreement and glad and thank all the parties involved because there's a lot of give and take in these negotiations, and but it's always good to bring them to fruition, which has happened with the agreement. So again, I think it's a win-win situation for everyone, and I'm just glad that we could get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sanchez. Any other comments or questions? I'll just echo those comments. It's great that we were able to come to this agreement, and also I'm just glad that we're able to recognize with the approval of this item, recognizing our staff with the bonus, particularly during such a challenging time and year during this pandemic. So thank you again for that. So if there's no other comments or questions, I'll accept a motion on this item.
I'd like to move forward with item 8.03 for approval, disclosure of collective bargaining agreement with Franklin-McKinley Education Association.
Second.
All right, item 8.03 has been moved and seconded. We'll move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Aye.
And my vote, Maymon of Alberta, is aye, so that motion passes. We will now go on to item 8.04, the approval of the tentative agreement between the Franklin-McKinley Education Association, FMEA, and the Franklin-McKinley School District, the district.
We'll take that one. FMEA and the district have reached a tentative agreement on Articles 3, compensation, Article 4, hours of employment, and Article 8, class size. This agreement is brought to you for your approval, contingent on the approval from the Santa Clara County Office of Education.
Thank you for that information. Are there any questions or comments from the board? All right, so with that, I'll accept a motion on this item.
Move to approve item 8.04, the approval of the tentative agreement between FMEA and the school district.
Second.
Item 8.04 has been moved and seconded. We will go to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Aye.
And my vote, Mimona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes. We will go on to item 8.05, the MOU with CSCA for one-time bonus for 2020 through 2021.
The district agrees to pay a one-time off-schedule bonus, which will be prorated for FTE to active CSEA bargaining unit members as of April 13th, 2021, not to exceed $4,500 as a recognition of the efforts of all CSEA members in supporting the needs of the FMSD community during the global COVID-19 pandemic. The MO2 is attached with parameters to apply.
Thank you for that information. Board members, any questions or comments on this item?
Just a comment. Just like the FMEA members, I think the CSEA members deserve the prorated bonus as well, and I'm very thankful to all of our teachers and staff that have worked hard during this this last year to make it possible for us to operate as well as we could during a pandemic. That is probably a once in a lifetime event for us. So a very sincere appreciation to everyone who has played a part in providing the best education possible to our children. It has been a challenge, but we'll get through it.
Thank you, Board Member Rodriguez. Any other questions or comments, board?
Just want to ditto those remarks by Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes, Board Member Rodriguez said that very eloquently. So I will leave it at that and we'll accept a motion on this item.
Move to approve the 8.05, the MOU CSEA one-time bonus for 2020-2021.
Second.
Right, the item 8.05, the MOU with CSA for the one-time bonus for 2020-2021 has been moved and seconded. We will go to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Aye.
And my vote, Mimona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes. We will go to item 8.06, the management and confidential compensation proposal.
Okay. This proposal is to recommend that the district's certificated and classified management, as well as confidential staff, be given the 2% raise on schedule retroactive to July 1, 2020, and that district's management, certificated and classified, and confidential staff also receive a $4,500 off-schedule bonus for service provided during the 2021 school year and the COVID-19 global pandemic.
Thank you for that, Assistant Superintendent. Board members, any questions or comments on this item?
I just want to say I'm glad that we were able to go ahead and bring forward this compensation proposal. And I think it's very fair, equitable to our management and confidential employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sanchez. And I'm excited that this is being offered to across the board, and in recognition of those of the efforts as well of each of our employees. So I'll accept a motion on this item whenever we're ready, board members.
Move to approve item 8.06, the management and confidential compensation proposal.
Second.
Great. Item 8.06 has been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Clerk Rosado.
Aye.
And my vote, Mimona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes. We will now go on to item 8.07, the Executive Cabinet Compensation Proposal. And so this was an item that I submitted, and, in recognition, just as with the other items, of the hard work being performed by our district leadership, especially during this really challenging year, and also, making sure that we're staying competitive with our surrounding districts. The recommendation is to provide the 2% on schedule raise for our assistant superintendents of business, human resources, and education services. And that would be retroactive to July 1, 2020. It's the same percent that was offered to certificated and management. And in addition, that the superintendent and assistant superintendents receive the $4,500 off schedule bonus for the services provided during this global pandemic. Any questions or comments, board members?
No, again, I just want to make a quick comment that it's, again, fair and equitable to extend it to our cabinet, executive cabinet and our superintendent. So it's good that we could bring this forward.
Thank you, Board Member Sanchez. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, I will accept a motion on this item.
Let me make a quick comment. I just want to thank you, President Alberta, for bringing this forward, because sometimes we forget to, about all the parties involved in our school district functions. And this is a great way to recognize our district leadership. So much appreciation to you as well for bringing that forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'll accept a motion on this item.
Move to approve item 8.07, the Executive Cabinet Compensation Proposal.
Second.
All right, item 8.07 has been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Clerk Rosado.
Aye.
And my vote, Mimona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes. We will now go on to item 8.08, to the 2021 acceptance of the first 5 grant for Learning Pods district-wide. Assistant Superintendent Van.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. This is an item brought to you tonight about our continued partnership with First Five. First Five Santa Clara has graciously offered Franklin-McKinley School District a $200,000 grant to support the expansion of the Student Day Support Program ran by Catholic Charities at various FMSD sites. Daily activities include supporting students logging in, ensuring students do not have any barriers to participating in FMSD's virtual learning program, providing after-school homework support, facilitating brain breaks, including socially distant physical activity and arts enrichment. It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the grant donation in the amount of $200,000 from First Five Learning Pods of District 1.
Thank you for that information. Board members, do you have any questions or comments on this item? Otherwise, I'll accept a motion when you're ready.
I'd like to make a motion, item 8.08, 2021 acceptance of First Five grant for Learning Pods district-wide.
Second.
Item 8.08 has been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Clerk Rosado.
Aye.
My vote, Mimona Alberta, is aye, and that motion passes. We will now go on to item 8.09, Resolution 2021-13 in support of California broadband legislation, Assembly Bill 14, Senate Bill 4, and Assembly Bill 34. So before you is a resolution, again, in support of the named legislation. I just wanted to provide just a brief overview of what these statewide legislations entail exactly. So we have Assembly Bill 14, which is really looking to fund the broadband infrastructure past its current sunset year, and also ensuring that there's high-speed, reliable broadbands throughout the state, specifically also including rural areas. And then we also have Senate Bill 4, that's making communities eligible for grants based on their internet need, and also setting a standard, increasing the standard for high-speed broadband internet access, which would allow local governments to apply for grants and finance their own infrastructure. We have Assembly Bill 34, which would place the California Broadband for Act All on the November 22 ballot. So it would be a general obligation bond to help us close the digital divide throughout the state of California by investing in that infrastructure. And so, we know that as a district, this has been, something that's been brought to our forefront during the pandemic, with trying to get our students as connected and families as connected as possible to the internet. We know that internet is in this day and age, it's a human right. It's how we make sure that our students and families can know where to pick up their meals, know where to get their COVID-19 vaccines and testing. There's just so much that our communities rely on the internet for. And we know that our short-term, solutions that we're able to provide, on the spot with, these hotspot devices, we know those are not long-term sustainable solutions. And so these these legislative bills will hopefully help us continue to move forward with addressing the digital divide so that our families and communities are better connected to the internet. Board members, any questions or comments on this item?
No, I'm fully supportive, and I'm glad. I guess one thing that will come out of this pandemic is hopefully the passage of legislation such as this to go ahead and spread broadband throughout California to all of our families. So if we end up in a similar situation, or even if we don't, that we can have be able to use the broadband much more expansively. So I'm glad that we're bringing this forward. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item?
No, move to accept resolution number 2021-13 in support of California broadband legislation for the bills listed.
Second.
All right, there is item 8.09 has been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Aye.
And my vote, Maymon Officer Berta, is aye. That motion passes. We will now go on to item 8.8.10, Resolution 2021-14, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Superintendent Cruz, do you want to start this off? You're muted.
Thank you. As that is now one of our resolutions that we bring forward annually in just recognition of the contributions from our Asian Pacific American community. And, again, right now it's even more important for us to make sure that we are speaking about the contributions of various groups, but specifically our Asian Pacific American community, and combat a lot of the hatred that is going on. But it starts with learning the history, learning the contributions, and providing context in the ways that we can for students to sort of understand the various contributions of various members of our community. So this is even more important today to be able to continue to provide this district-wide and encourage our staff to take this opportunity to highlight this, not just today, but certainly making an extra effort around this time to make sure that we bring awareness to our students.
And I'll just, echo those thoughts. We know that the the Asian Pacific American community is such a diverse community. And it's really important that when we talk about and teach our students about, our community members, that we're also including and celebrating a lot of their achievements, and along with that, the histories that should be included when we talk with our students in our classrooms as well. And especially in light of the attacks and the violence that we're seeing, I think it's even more important to make sure that we are demonstrating to the greatest extent possible, celebrating diversity and that inclusiveness in our school district. Board members, any questions or comments on this item?
I'm just glad that we're bringing this resolution forward. And again, the contributions of the Asian Pacific American population is great. And so I'm fully supportive of the resolution, and I'm glad it's being brought forward.
Thank you. So if there are no other questions or comments, I'll accept a motion on this item.
Move to approve item 8.10, resolution number 2021-14, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month.
Second.
All right, item 8.10, resolution 2021-14, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month has been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Clerk Rosado.
Aye.
My vote, Maimona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes. We will now go on to item 8.11, reporting on delegating authority to take the necessary action to protect students and staff from the spread of coronavirus COVID-19. Superintendent Cruz.
Yes, outside of what we reported earlier, I have not taken any further action as authorized by the board under this item.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. We will now go to item 8.12, waive the paraprofessional requirement for the choral staff positions for the 2021 school year. Superintendent Cruz?
Yes, so this is a requirement for our choral staff that don't have an AA degree already. They need to pass a paraprofessional test that we administer here at the district office. Given the need of trying to hire as many staff to be able to support our choral programs, we're bringing this forward as a temporary measure, a waiver that would only extend to the end of the school year to allow staff that would meet all the other requirements other than this particular assessment to be able to be hired and be in our classroom supporting our learning ponds. We will be working with choral over the summer to provide tutoring for those that have not passed it and need support, in the hopes that they can pass it and then continue to work with our choral program in the fall, as we are also going to be needing additional staff for when we return in person for the regular after-school program, as part of our efforts to extend the school day for students, as we're looking to be able to address some of the impact that the pandemic has had on students. So I bring this for your consideration.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. Board members, any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion.
I'd like to go ahead and move forward on item 8.12 to waive the paraprofessional requirement for the choral staff positions for the 2021 school year.
Second.
Okay, item 8.12 has been moved and seconded. We will move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Clerk Rosado.
Aye.
And my vote, Maimona Alberta, is aye. That motion passes. We will now go to item 9, communications from the superintendent. Superintendent Cruz.
Yes, I just want to echo a lot of the comments that the board has already offered in terms of my appreciation and thanks to all our staff, my cabinet, administration, our certificate and classified not only throughout the year have they been stepping up and really trying to make sure that we are providing the best support for our students, but now as we shifted to really think about how we can safely return to in-person, it's just an indication of just the type of district that we're in and the type of staff and our staff and our families that understand what we have in front of us and understand that we want our best, what's best for our students, but we also want to be safe. And so I just want to thank everybody for your support. Certainly, thank the board for your consideration of the compensation for all staff. I think it's important. It just sends a strong message of the appreciation and the support that we have from all, the 5 board members in regards to the way that, we approach things here in Franklin-McKinley. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. We will now go to item 10, communications from the Board of Education. Item 10.01, board member reports. And we'll start with Board Member Sanchez.
Thank you. Just a couple of things real quick. I did win a seat in the delegate assembly, so I want to thank my board and all the other boards who voted for me. So it's a 2-year seat, so I am glad for that. There was a tie, so there's a runoff. Like there's 3 people for 2 positions, but there's 1 vacant position already. So we have a meeting tomorrow of the delegates, and we'll decide whether we're going to vote on those positions or not. So we're going to make a decision on that tomorrow afternoon. I talked to Albert real quick, and I guess right now CSBA is planning to have their conference and the delegate assembly meeting take place in person this year. So they're planning on that when that comes around in December. So right now, those are the plans. Also last week, I helped the food drive at Lerone again, the second Thursday of the month. So I helped again, and I just wanted to thank the custodians. We have 2 custodians there that are always, very helpful, in terms of open up a restroom if you need, the storage room there to take out the chairs and put them back in and so on. So, or the tables. So anyway, so, there's a way we could send a thank you note or something, I don't know how we do that. I thank them there, but it'd be nice for them to get something, maybe something in writing, a recognition certificate or something like that, And I got my second vaccine this past Wednesday, so I am fully vaccinated, which worked out perfect. So my son and I went to opening day in San Francisco. We didn't get tickets yet, but I wanted to make sure we could get in. So I went and asked the lady, I showed her my vaccine and, that I had taken both. And she said, oh, yeah, that's fine. You can get in. I said, okay. So I told my son, okay, get the tickets. So we got the tickets and got in and had a super time. So anyway, but that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sanchez, and congratulations.
Thank you.
On your election. Board Member Rodriguez.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate George on his re-election as a delegate. I hope you're able to keep all the promises you made. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's it. No report. Thanks.
Thank you, Board Member Rodriguez. Clerk Rosado.
Congrats, George, on the win. That's great. Just a quick report. Had the opportunity to provide training at a local tech company in regards to how to support the trans community and show allyship. They're really impressed with the training, and so they've asked me to continue to provide support now for the autism community. So I feel really passionate about that. Also been working with the Human Rights Commission here in San Jose to get support from the city to establish a task force to support the disabilities community here in San Jose, since currently there isn't one. And so if anyone's interested in getting involved, let me know. We're also trying to push for them to reestablish the ADA coordinator position, which has been vacant since 2013. And so, yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Clerk Rosado, for all of those updates. And then for my report, I just wanted to share, I was able to participate in the Santa Clara County Office of Education. They had a digital equity webinar. And so I was able to share kind of the importance behind continuing to advocate for digital equity from a teacher's perspective. and all the different ways that we use, both technology and access to the internet with our students. I also participated in a call to action event with my alma mater, Loyola Marymount University, specifically around these California legislative bills for the ones that we approved the resolution for. So AB 14, SB 4, and AB 34. So we can continue to make progress on statewide access to the internet. So I will be calling on my fellow board members and anyone else in the community who wants to get involved in that advocacy so we can make sure we're building this momentum statewide. We have this momentum here locally, and we've been fortunate to have the support of our county and city also involved in some of these short-term solutions. But it's going to be really important for us to build that level of momentum across the state of California. And finally, I just want to wish our community Ramadan Mubarak for those who are starting the month of fasting and reflection. Today was the first day of fasting for in Santa Clara County, about 250,000 local Muslims. So with that, I will go on to item 10.02, agenda item requests. Board members, are there any other requests that you'd like to make at this time?
No.
Just keep us updated as far as how the return back to being on site is going. So.
Thank you, Clerk Rosado.
I did, it's not an agenda item request. I forgot to ask during my board member report, but are we planning to have a in-person board meeting soon?
I was just going to get to that.
Okay,
for the next,
then I'll sit tight.
for future
Never mind.
meeting dates.
Never
Yes,
mind.
great question. Great question, Board Member Rodriguez. We will go over that information, I think, once we get to item 12. Already thinking ahead. Any other agenda item requests? All right, so we've got some listed there already. We'll go to item 11, future business. Seeing none there, we'll go to item 12, future meeting dates. So we do have the item 12.01, 12.02, and 12.03 listed there with the dates April 27th, May 11th, and May 25th. Superintendent Cruz, do you want to provide an update on the location of those board meetings?
Yes, so we've been working with IT and installing a camera that would allow for us to broadcast the meetings so as that the board and cabinet can be in person, but still not allow, at least for the 27th, for the public to come in to in person. And actually, one of the, I think there was a comment earlier in terms of some of the things that can still work for us for a future. And I think that we've gotten a greater participation of our community when we are broadcasting our meetings. So we are planning for the April 27th to have cabinet and the board be in person back in our boardroom and broadcast and allow for the public to participate virtually as well for public comment and those kinds of things. We may not have it fully installed, but we will make it happen, even if it is with a temporary camera and broadcasting. So Samara is hearing me on the other room, and we've been talking about this as a first test of us to be back for the April 27th meeting.
Thank you for that update. So again, board members, we will be resuming for in-person meetings, and the public will be able to participate virtually and access the live stream. And thank you, Samara, and the rest of our IT team for working diligently to help us make that transition as smoothly as possible. We have item 13, closed session, which we are not going back to at this time. So with that, we'll move to item 14, adjournment. I'll accept a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, the motion has been made to adjourn. We'll move to a roll call vote. Board Member Sanchez?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Clerk Rosado?
Aye.
My vote, Manuel Alberta, is aye. So we are now adjourned at 9:29 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.